Today at Speedy's Garage, we're installing a Per4mance Development IRS differential brace on the Hellcat. The kit comes complete with the brace, nylon buttress, rubber isolator, locating tab, installation hardware, Loctite 242, and the instruction sheet. In order to obtain the latest version of the installation instructions, you're going to want to point your browser at the company's website, www.getperformance.com, and scroll down until you see the Easy Installation link, which will open the installation instructions. To perform the install, you need just some basic hand tools. You might need an M8 by 1.25 tap. That might be the only special tool you'll need, and that'll depend on if your cross brace has the threaded inserts in it or not. They could be rusted or full of debris. You'll need that to clean them out. Late 2016, Dodge changed some things on the rear cross brace, and it doesn't include the threaded inserts anymore. So keep that in mind when you're doing your install. I'm going to use my electric ratchet, but you can just use a standard one if that's all you have. We need a couple of torque wrenches, one that's capable of 90 foot-pounds, one that's capable of 50 foot-pounds, an extension for your 90 foot-pound torque wrench. You're going to need 10, 13, 15, and 16 millimeter sockets. You're going to need a 13 millimeter stubby wrench, and that's to put in the through bolts that go up through the brace and into the cross member for those of us that do not have the threaded inserts, which is the case with my car. A light, a creeper, and finally you need a way to elevate the rear of the vehicle to make it easier to work on. I have race ramps, so that's what I'm using. Makes things nice and quick. However, you could also do this on jack stands in a pinch. Next, you want to set the parking brake just for safety. And here's the problem this part is going to help resolve. All of your differential mounting points are mounted in rubber isolators or grommets. Now, they're very hard rubber, but they still have some give to them. And under high performance situations, these can allow wheel hop, they can allow the differential to move around, and with all that stress, several people have actually cracked and broken this actual aluminum differential housing. And obviously that's no bueno. So this brace is going to go in here and kind of shore up and firm up this whole area to give it some extra strength. And reports are that it actually helps the car launch straighter and reduces wheel hop. Okay, the first step is to remove this left differential 16 millimeter bolt and then loosen this right differential 16 millimeter bolt until it backs out about 1/2 of an inch. Next, we're going to install the locator tab with the large hole at the top and the factory 16 millimeter bolt you just removed. Now this is an aluminum housing, so always start your bolts by hand to ensure you don't cross thread anything. And once you have it started, you can go at it with a tool. You want the locator tab to run about parallel with the fins on the differential. And at this point, I recommend you do a quick test fit of the brace to make sure it clears your exhaust. And in my case, I have about 3/8 inch of clearance, so I can go ahead and tighten this 16 millimeter differential bolt to 90 foot-pounds. Next, prepare your through bolt for your locator tab by putting a little bit of the included 242 Loctite. I think I said it was red previously, but it's actually blue. Put that on your bolt, and then coming in from the right with your brace, slide it over the 16 millimeter bolt on the right side of the differential and align it with the locating tab. Insert your bolt. Use your lock washer on the back side of the bolt, and finally the nut. And you're just going to run this down hand tight for now to allow the brace to locate to the cross brace. Now, as I mentioned, your car may have threaded nuts already in this area. If you do, you're good to go. Just check them with the through bolts to make sure they're clear. Use the M8 by 1.25 tap to clear them if they're not. In my case, mine's a 2016, later year 2016 car that does not have those threaded inserts already there. So that means I'm going to have to use the nuts, the lock nuts that are provided in the kit to secure those bolts. Next, you want to install the rubber isolator and the nylon spacer or buttress. And you'll notice they have a long side and a short side. Short side goes towards the driver side of the car, and they should match up. Same with the rubber piece. Rubber goes first against the brace. Since my car doesn't have the threaded inserts in the cross member, we have to use the included lock nuts that came with the kit. And there are slots on each side that I pointed out previously. And you just slide the nut in there and then move it over till you can get in position. Prepare your 10mm M8 bolt, put a little blue Loctite on the threads. Don't forget your lock washer, and then feed it up through the nylon, the rubber, and the brace. It's gonna be a little bit tricky because you're kind of doing this blind, but we wanna line up that nut with this bolt so that we can tighten it. Eventually you'll get the bolt down far enough where it hits the locking threads and you won't be able to turn it anymore. That's where your stubby 13mm wrench will come in. And if you don't have something like this, you can always cut off a regular one and use it that way. You get it hooked on the nut and then start tightening down your 10mm bolt. Do the same for both sides. There wasn't a torque spec listed for these M8 10mm bolts that go through the brace and into the cross member, but it did say to tighten them enough until it compresses this rubber isolator about 1mm. So that's exactly what we did. Now I will say this is probably the hardest part of the install if you weren't lucky enough to have those threaded inserts in your cross member. Getting the bolt, or the nut rather, through these slots and then getting the stubby 13mm wrench on them, that was a little bit challenging. Just take your time and have some patience. It'll probably add another 15 minutes to the install versus someone who was lucky enough to have those threaded inserts, so not too big of a deal. Next, you want to tighten your M10 13mm bracket bolt to 50 foot-pounds. And finally, tighten your right differential mount bolt to 90 foot-pounds. Now, as you can see, clearance around your nylon buttress and your bracket to get to that right side bolt is a little bit tight. So I ended up using a 6-inch extension for my torque wrench. Mine happens to be 1/2 inch. If you have 3/8, you might be in a little bit better shape. And then I used an adapter to go from 1/2 to 3/8, and then used a wobble socket to make sure I was on that bolt nice and snug. So that's how I got it done. One final suggestion is to take a Sharpie and make some alignment marks on your 3 bolts. That way, in the unlikely event something starts to loosen, you'll have a reference point. So that's all there is to the Per4mance Development rear differential brace install. It'll fit 2015 and newer RT, Scat Pack, SRT 392, and Hellcat vehicles. Now we're just going to go out for a test drive and see how much better the car feels. I drove Go Around this afternoon with the Per4mance Development rear brace installed, and honestly couldn't tell it was there other than the rear feeling a bit more connected. There was no additional NVH to speak of, and I did several hard launches at varying RPM and never could induce any wheel hop even though I tried. Full disclosure though, I never experienced a whole lot of wheel hop with the car initially, so I can't say for certain if the brace helps with that or not, but others have reported that it does. What I can say is that this will obviously provide some additional support and strength to the rear differential of the vehicle, and for the price, it's cheap insurance. If you'd like to see more how-to and racing tips, be sure to visit my website, www.speedysgarage.net, and be sure to click subscribe in the bottom right corner.